Milé divačky, milí diváci, dobrý večer. Vítám vás na 56. ročníku Akademie Film Olomouc a na rozhovoru v rámci sekce Představ si fakta. Jmenuji se Zdeněk Richtera a jsem dramaturg této sekce o vizualizaci dat, kterou jsem připravil společně s Muzeem umění Olomouc. K rozhovoru jsem si dnes pozval australského digitálního umělce Andyho Thomase, který se specializuje na vizualizaci ptačího zpěvu a zvuků amazonského pralesa. Dva jeho filmy můžete zhlédnout už nyní na naší online platformě online.watchandknow.cz. Hi Andy, and thank you for accepting the invitation. As this interview could be a starting point for some of our viewers, could you please shortly introduce yourself, your films, and your work?
My name's Andy Thomas. I'm a digital artist that works in the field of 3D motion design. And I started my career in the early 90s doing like UV murals for dance parties, raves and stuff. And then I started getting into doing flyers for dance parties and stuff. And that led into kind of learning about computers. So in the 2000s, I started getting stuck into computers a lot and kind of teaching myself animation. And maybe about a decade later, I started working on these bird sound kind of ideas and animating bird sounds because I've always been into nature. I like the intersection of nature and technology. And I kind of see like technology as being some kind of extension of evolution. So evolution's taken millions of years to get to this point, and now humans have come along and evolution is now taking some strange, bizarre path into the future. And I really like this concept, and I've kind of always gravitated towards it with my work. So visualizing bird sounds with computers, like it felt to me like running nature through a computer and then spitting it back out again. You know what I mean? I really like that kind of concept. So people gravitated towards that. You know, I did a few experiments in like 2013 and people loved this idea, and they resonated with it. And so I started going on some expeditions to different parts of the world. One of them led me to the Amazon in 2016. After doing a artisan residency in Finland, I travelled to the Amazon, and I had a guide and stuff all ready to go, set up, and they helped me with recording bird sounds and travelling around. And you know, it's kind of a rough place in the Amazon. You know, Manaus I went to, and it's kind of a bit of a shock, really, of how it was quite a lot of poverty and stuff, and from going from Finland and the cold and stuff straight to this jungle poverty region was really interesting. But we went to various locations around, like north of Manaus, and recorded sounds. And then when I got back, it took me about a year, I guess, to get all the stuff together and start producing it.
Yeah, so actually you yourself recorded all the sounds in the films that we can hear.
I had a guide that was recording the sounds. So he was a bird expert. He was an ornithologist, and he had a little, little recorder of a whole stack of bird sounds, and he would play the bird sounds on his recorder, and the birds would respond to that. You know, so it was a really amazing way of getting the bird sounds. So yeah.
Okay, so how does this piece, visualization of bird sounds, connect to your other work?
I've been doing this visualizing of sound a lot. So I visualize electronic sounds too. I like the idea of getting a waveform and then piping that into my 3D software, and then the 3D software reacts to the waveform via a audio node in my 3D software. So I see all these sounds in my imagination as 3D kind of shapes and patterns and colors and Um, Even when I'm just walking along, and I hear things, I kind of see it in my imagination, not in my vision. So I guess I have to kind of express it somehow, you know.
So the field recordings of the bird sounds were first, or was that the idea of actually visualizing them?
I think the first idea came, maybe it was like 2012, and I remember seeing a plane fly overhead, and there was a bird sitting in a tree, and it was singing, and it was in just the exact same angle as the plane, and there was some kind of connection with the plane and the bird and technology and flying or something like that. It triggered something. Yeah, yeah. I distinctly remember it, and I remember thinking to myself, like, this idea is great, and yeah, I think that's where it's born from.
So the first film is from 2016, right? So after all these years, what progress did you make? What do you think about the whole concept of animation and visualization now?
I think it's a way of seeing the world differently, and like when you look at the sun, it's just a white ball. But if you use a X-ray, you see the sun in a completely different way. And I think maybe the visualization of sound is something similar. It's like there's a world there that is hidden, and most people don't see it, and people could see it, and it is there. And I guess it's interpretive too. So, you know, as all art is. So my interpretation of visualizing sound is obviously going to be something different to what someone else visualizes.
All right, talking about visualizations, could you give maybe a few good examples of artists maybe that inspired you in your work?
Yeah, I can give a great example. There's a artist that I really love who is from Australia called Robin Fox, and he uses lasers. So he visualizes sounds with his lasers. So the lasers are all perfectly timed with the sounds that he produces. And it's not music, it's more kind of like experimental electronic sounds. And it's something about seeing, it's like this technology monster, you know, it's like seeing the lasers and the sound work together at the same time in a big space. Um, there's something about that really triggered me as well, seeing some of his shows, you know, seeing like this,
Hmm.
it's almost got an eerie kind of feel to it, you know, like technology is this creature that's like developing as we develop, you know. Yeah. There's many other examples too. There's a Japanese artist, Royo Akita, I think his name is. He does the Dataverse stuff, and his work is really inspirational too. There's probably a few others I could list as well, but yeah, yeah.
Could visualizations be helpful in spreading scientific facts, maybe? Because artistic way of looking at the world is kind of similar on the intersection with the scientific way of looking at the world. So could this, in a way, be combination of those?
Definitely. I think when you see a data set and it's been visualized, as humans, we respond to the visual medium in a different kind of way, and it gives us a different perspective on the data set that we're looking at. So I'm not sure if I can give the perfect example, but um, yeah, like it helps us understand when you see like a graph, for example, and you see a spike in a graph, you know, it makes you realize how profound that is. And like you look at climate change graphs, for example, and you see this spike go up where, you know, and it really gives you this profound kind of idea of how it how the data is, you know. Yeah, I think it really can really help a lot.
Yeah, you talked about 3D software that you developed and that you're using for the animation. So my question is your film are your films computer generated, or is it actually made by you inch by inch, the whole thing?
It's all me myself, inch by inch, the whole thing. So it's there's like when I pipe the sound into the 3D software, there's so many like parameters I can adjust with the waveform. I can kind of plug it into any aspect of. So I'll have like a piece of geometry, and the geometry can be manipulated. That's an emitter of particles, so I can manipulate the geometry with the waveform, like making it stretch or move in this direction or that, and then it spawns particles as it goes, and then I can adjust the size of the particles or the colors of it with the sound as well. So there's various aspects of it, but I'm constantly sculpting it like a sculpture. It's the computer's not just generating it randomly. It's like I have an idea about how I want it to look, and sometimes I want to emulate the look of the bird, and sometimes I don't feel that, and sometimes I just the sound of the bird creates a visual expression in my imagination that I want to get out. So there's a bit of that, both of those kind of things going on at the same time. So I'll do all these tests. I'll just constantly do little tests to see what shape looks cool and whether that suits the direction or feel I want for this particular bird sound. And the same goes with all the other sound animations I do as well, you know? So, yeah.
You talked about interpretation, emotion, and feel. These are concepts that don't really come close to science and scientific viewing of the world. So my question is, do you have any background in science and maybe inspirations that you can build on?
Well, I love science, and I watch documentaries all the time, nature documentaries, and I study how animals behave watching documentaries and stuff, you know. So I have a great enthusiasm for biology and also other parts of science too, space and things like that I'm quite interested in. So, yeah, I think like a direction I'd like to take it further is to have like these bird sounds, like the structures, the forms move dependent on biological things too, like how a particular bird might like have a mating ritual or something, and try and kind of emulate that with the form too. I haven't quite gotten to that level yet, but I think that's a direction I'd like to take. So I'd like to probably team up with some biologists and get a bit more information, or ornithologists, and get a bit more information about particular behaviours of birds, and kind of pipe that into the actual art as well.
Yeah, you actually answered my next question, which was about if you ever thought about connecting with ornithologists or biologists and other scientists. So yeah, you actually thought about that. It could be a great tool, your films and animations.
Definitely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of scope there. And I think there's a real connection between science and art, and obviously you guys are keen on that connection too. And I think it's only just like, maybe it goes back hundreds of years, but now with the rise of technology, I think it's something that can be explored in some really fascinating ways, and seeing what other people are doing too. And yeah, I think there's some real good scope there, you know, and because scientists work, they have their mind and their brain too, and artists have a different kind of angle, you know, on and the two together can come up with some really interesting results, and results that resonate with the viewer too. Because sometimes, especially young, you know, kids and stuff, like science can be dry. It can be so having an artistic kind of angle to it can really resonate with the general public or whoever else, you know.
Your visualizations of bird sounds actually kind of remind me of 3D softwares and, you know, mastering tools like DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere. So could there be actually a tool like use them like that in a way?
Yeah, of course. I think it could definitely be, I think it will be used like that. I think there will be, and I think the interface with humans and computers will probably be more sophisticated. Obviously, I don't quite know what that looks like. Maybe using your hands and stuff as well, and some kind of physical interaction with the screen or in some way. I think we'll probably head in that direction. So if you've got an interaction with the interface now that's really organic, and you're receiving information like in different ways, such as visual sound, then I think that'll open up a whole stack of amazing results, amazing kind of angles that people hadn't thought of before, and amazing results in science too. With like, if you imagine a brain, like a doctor who's like a brain surgeon or something, and he has a 3D brain that he can move the hands around and like zoom in, and like they might even be doing stuff like this already. If you've got ways of finding a brain tumor within this 3D brain that you can go into, and it's going to open up the whole realm of amazing possibilities.
Yeah, I was thinking you're a visual artist and always working with computers, but your work always is coming back to the nature. So you find yourself, how do you find yourself balancing on this discrepancy?
Yeah, look, I think I like to go and walk in the forest every day and get into nature and get off the computer and realize that, the computer is fantastic and all, but you have to also still realize that you're a biological entity and that you need to interact with nature because it's helpful to your mental health and all of that kind of thing. I think it's good to honor nature as well, and even watching nature documentaries, and there's so much beauty out there. There's so much amazing. It's so mind-boggling how amazing nature is, and evolution, and how far it's come, and the fact that some people just sit around watching Netflix and watching the Kardashians or something, and meanwhile there's an amazing world of nature out there, and they don't interact with it at all. It's sad and mind numbing. Hopefully, my work in some way reminds people that technology and nature can coexist and inspire each other.
Yeah, so we can learn about nature, but from the visualizations, can we learn about technology itself?
Yeah, I think, like I was saying before, the future developments of my work, I think I want to focus, more on like the meaning behind the bird calls, and like if it's a mating call or something, and that one particular part of the sound has a certain shape to it or a color to it than another part of the bird sound. And yeah, I think there's like, maybe that helps in some way of like seeing the sound might help people studying birds and stuff to think in a different way, possibly. So yeah, I think it can definitely help in some way.
Yeah, the works from the Amazon are actually quite major now, that 2016. Do you think they made you famous digital artist? What do you think?
Yeah, look, I've done a few experiments with other sounds, with other birds, with other animal sounds. There's a whole wealth of stuff to get into there. I don't have a whole massive array of sound recording equipment. I do record bird sounds myself on some rudimentary equipment that I have, and I get some pretty good results from it, really. As far as capturing other animal sounds goes, myself, sometimes that can be quite challenging, like in Australia here, like yeah, I don't know. Apart from birds, like there's other animals, but recording their sounds is a little bit difficult. But I've even thought about getting into more man-made things as well, and recording sounds of machines and various other things, and seeing what results I can get from that. That really inspires me, and obviously I've been experimenting with electronic sounds and trying to make my own bird sounds. I did like a range of bird sounds that I made myself using a little TB3 Roland kind of synthesizer, and trying to emulate bird sounds myself. And that was quite fun. You know, I liked the idea of experimenting more with electronic sounds. Yeah, like I loved, one of the albums back in the old days is Future Sound of London. They did this album called Life Forms, and they really experimented with the idea of using electronic sounds to emulate nature. And I always loved that. I always gravitated towards that, and I like the idea of experimenting more with that. I don't think a lot of people have delved into that realm enough. I think breaking out of someone like me that's not a classical musician, like it maybe is a different angle of breaking out of that kind of a sound should be structured into a song kind of format rather than organic kind of forms. So yeah, I think there's some experimentation there for sure.
So with your work, you've been pretty famous. You went to all the festivals and an audience are reaching to people actually. So how does that feel? And if I can ask, what are you working on now?
Yeah, I think a lot of people resonated with it, definitely. And I had a lot of response from that, film festivals and performances and stuff. It definitely, I think I had a name for myself doing these tree pictures for years. And then I branched out into visualizing sounds and animation with these bird sound stuff. And that was a kind of different angle that people really liked, and maybe a different audience too of different people. And yeah, possibly, I don't know what famous is, but yeah, known. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Let me ask you again, what are you working on now?
At the moment, I've got a few things on the go. I'm working on more tree pictures. Actually, I just released a new tree. I hadn't done one for like 5 years, so it was quite good to.
Sorry, what are the three pictures?
So I create these like huge like pictures using 3D. I create things using ZBrush and render it with V-Ray and various other renderers. So I get a still image of these like organic structures I make, like using a pen tablet. I kind of carve out these sculptures, and then I mix them with a whole stack of photos I take on these expeditions that I go on. So I've got a whole wealth of photography, like macro stuff of moss and various other things, and I kind of splice them all together into these like giant pictures. So I'll have like pictures of a rainforest and then pictures of moss, and kind of mix them together, like the small things and the big things together. And it's amazing how things at various scales, like a piece of moss can look like a forest when you mix it with a forest. You know what I mean? The two images. It's kind of like this concept of self-similarity, when the repeating patterns at different scales. So like broccoli looks the same as a tree, you know what I mean? Or like there's these patterns through nature in different scales. And I like that that's where that stuff comes from. So I'd been focusing a lot more on animation the last 5 years, and I hadn't done any of these pictures that people loved. I hadn't done any for quite a few years. So I've kind of gone back to that the last like month or so. So I'm going to do a few more of those. The last one I did was kind of based on photos from New Zealand. And this next one will be some from Finland that I've been there, that I took when I was over there years ago. I've got all these photos. And it's good to kind of get away from the animation stuff for a little bit too. It's good to mix it up a bit. It can be a bit of a mind clash sometimes when you're constantly in this world of tiny little sounds and animation and tweaking it, and can do your head in a bit, so you got to take a break from it sometimes and work on some other things. So but after that, I've got heaps of ideas, and we'll see.
Yeah, I hope you get those breaks a lot. Thank you, Andy, for this great interview. Thank you so much. And I hope we can meet throughout the next upcoming editions of AFO physically. Thank you.
No worries. It was great to meet you. Good luck with the lockdowns, and I hope you're free of it all soon. And hopefully I can come over and visit.
Thank you so much, Andy. A děkuji vám, milé divačky a milí diváci. Právě jste sledovali rozhovor s Andym Thomasem, vizuálním umělcem z Austrálie. A 2 jeho filmy, o kterých jsme se zrovna bavili, nyní můžete sledovat na naší online platformě online.watchandknow.cz. Najdete tam i další filmy ze sekce Představ si fakta a další minimálně 100 filmů ze soutěží i nesoutěžních sekcí. Moc krát vám děkuji a přeji vám hezký večer. Pro AFO 56 Zdeněk Richter.